Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tamina Kausji. Niaga Spotlight takes us through the week in economic analysis and future affairs. Now today on Analysis, our spotlight is on the race to seamless ASEAN payments. In essence, we are looking at one of the least glamorous but most decisive factors in Malaysia's next stage of digital growth, how money moves across ASEAN. Now, across the region, businesses still face different payment rules, settlement times, and verification standards in every market. Even with plenty of progress on cross-border QR links between Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Indonesia, the reality on the ground remains uneven. For many Malaysian firms, especially SMEs, expanding into ASEAN still means slower collections, higher costs and complicated reconciliation across multiple systems. Now this matters because ASEAN's digital economy is projected to exceed $1 trillion by 2030, yet cross-border payment friction keeps many Malaysian companies especially from capturing this growth. The question now is whether we can build reliable, fast and consistent payment rails that match the scale of regional trade. Today, we speak with two leaders shaping that transition and what it could mean for Malaysia's competitiveness in a fast integrating ASEAN. Welcome to the studios today. With me are Zian Wei, Chief Strategy Officer with Xendit Malaysia, together with Jayson, Poon, Country Manager, Xendit Malaysia. A very good morning, gentlemen. Pleasure to have you in the studios. Let's get started off by perhaps me first asking Zian about the fragmented payment systems in Southeast Asia. So a couple of perspectives with the fact that, of course, when you're looking at Southeast Asia cross-border payments, you're definitely dealing with different rules, different settlement times, and payment methods in every country. From your regional view, what are some of the biggest frictions which are slowing down cross-border payments first, before we launch into how Xendit's actually approaching all of these pain points?
Thank you for the introduction, Tamina. I think some of the challenges that businesses face when they are going cross-border, like you rightly pointed out, regulation, because every different country has their own different set of regulation that businesses have to adhere to. Compliance, every country have different levels of maturity, fraud risk and so on, hence resulting in stricter compliance requirements depending on the different countries. Onboarding requirements as well, what is familiar to Malaysian businesses may not be something that they are familiar with going cross-border, and businesses have to start over in each country whenever they try to expand regionally, not to mention the hundreds of different types of payment channels across Southeast Asia. You have FPX online banking that is very familiar to local businesses, but there's also virtual accounts in Indonesia that's probably unheard of.
Over here at least, but it's a huge, incredibly large market there.
It's the #1 biggest payment channel in Indonesia, as well as all the different QR payment options across Southeast Asia. So how Xendit solves this is we aggregate all of the above and we remove the complexity such that businesses just have to deal with one partner when they are expanding regionally. It's a simple onboarding process for them to and a single platform and dashboard such that it's just a single reporting and reconciliation process for them, such that they don't have to deal with one report for every single payment channel that they are working with.
Absolutely. So, of course, that seamlessness is part of the biggest draw. And most recently, Xendit also has integration together with PayX that is also going to perhaps add on to some immediate improvements. For Malaysian businesses, what does this mean?
So I think what's interesting is now Malaysian businesses not only enjoys the full capability of what PayX used to have. You're talking about all the local payment options, recurring payments, installment payments. At the same time, we now also have access to Xendit's regional payment capabilities, such as PayNow in Singapore, Curious in Indonesia. And because we're licensed in every market that we're in, we have relationship with all the local payment networks and a local operation team in every market we are in. We can help local businesses bridge the gap between Malaysia and cross-border.
Exactly, because that brings you to a stage where you're able to also assist with regional competitiveness. Thanks, Zian. Jayson, I'd like to talk to you a little more in depth about the real pain points that you've observed via the work that you do with Malaysian SMEs. They are managing definitely multiple payment providers and having to reconcile sales by hand at the end of the day. So from what you see on the ground, which part of our payment processes are actually rather inefficient today, and they can be smoothed much further along with some of these innovations?
For sure. Thanks for having us here today. Yeah, so I think like what you have pointed out, I think the SME businesses in Malaysia in general have to deal with, I think, more than 1,000 payment channels. I think this region, including Malaysia, was blessed with a diversity of payment channels, right? And then at one hand it's good because the customer would then have multiple choices to make payments. But on the business side, it could sometimes create
a little bit of chaos behind the scenes, right?
So having to deal with all the payment channel means the business now would have to access the dashboard from each of the different providers. Friends who work on businesses have told me they have now have to manage about 2, 3 or 4 dashboards at the same time. What that means is that it's lower settlement, tougher reconciliation on the finance point of view. And this is more so if the businesses decided to go beyond Malaysia, like what Zian has mentioned, into other Southeast Asian markets. They could potentially have to deal with hundreds of payment channels. So I think what Xendit now come into the picture is that we then provide a single dashboard for local businesses to accept all the local payment channel, including also the overseas payment channel that we had across Southeast Asia. Really, abstracting all the complexity that the businesses would have to face if they were to expand in Southeast Asia, and then let them focus on things that matter the most to them, which is to grow their business.
Exactly, because it is a matter of fact that even in 2025, there are plenty of SMEs who are still actually manually tabulating their numbers at the end of the day. Over time, of course, not sustainable at all, especially if you want to be on a growth trajectory. Thanks for that, Jayson. So Zian, now let's talk about looking at turning interoperability into real business value. So Malaysia, of course, we've made plenty of progress with our cross-border QR links with Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, but adoption sizes also vary by sector and business size. Tell us a little more about what Xendit is doing to convert such regional links into practical benefits for the business owners.
I think what's interesting about how we have evolved regionally is, for example, post-COVID, whenever I have to travel, I always have to go to a money exchanger to exchange money whenever I have to go abroad to pay. But post-COVID, especially regionally, recently I haven't had to do that at all. Using any bank app in Malaysia, I can go to Singapore to pay via Pay Now, go to Indonesia to pay via QRIS. And I think what's interesting about that is because Xendit is a regional player and we are connected and working with all these local payment rails, we're in a very good position to work with them to help solve these pain points for businesses. For example, one very interesting problem we encountered was, for example, when a local customer, Malaysian customer, tried to pay in Thailand, when they tried to scan a PromptPay app, that failed because the merchant there was using their personal QR rather than a business QR.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah, because we are a partner of PromptPay and also doing now in Malaysia, we are able to identify these issues and work with the local payment rails to help solve for these problems.
Exactly. So there is a lot of value, and it's of course also a learning process because, for example, localized merchants outside of Malaysia, they also slowly are able to understand the value of being on wider operating systems. Great. Jayson, so then talking about keeping compliance strong without raising costs. Now that's always the be-all and the end-all when it comes to businesses and why they decide to sign up and sign on to a platform provider. Tell us about how, whereas Malaysia is strengthening our rules for fraud prevention, at the same time, some of the compliance requirements have become a little bit harder to bear for the smaller players in business. Yeah. Some ideas on that.
For sure. I think one of our key value prop is really to abstract the complexity when it comes to compliance and regulations, especially for the SMEs. How we do that, last year alone, I think we processed close to 45 billion worth of US dollars in transaction.
Impressive, yes.
I believe we have some of the best-in-class infrastructure hardened infrastructure to process payments securely within the region. And I think we also ensure that all the payments that goes through our infrastructure are hardened, and then all the payment would have to be authenticated properly. User have to provide consent before the payment is made. We work very hard towards that. And the next point that I would like to raise is also by default, most of the most of the SMEs or businesses in Malaysia, they let us manage the payment page for them. So by doing so, again, they don't have to worry too much about all the compliances that they'll have to meet, which is costly and it's cumbersome. So we took that away from the SMEs.
That's incredible, because that completely removes the dimension of the slowed down onboarding for these smaller SMEs.
Yeah.
And what's the feedback been so far lately over, let's say, just the past year, Jayson?
Across the board, I think it's positive. I think the merchant that with us for a few years, are now not just riding on PayX. They also understood that what Xendit infrastructure is able to give them. I think Zian spoke about the regional reach. What it then also means SME in Malaysia who have now customers, whether it's from Singapore or Thailand or Indonesia, they can quickly grow into those countries without the need to open a new bank account, new business entity, all at the flip of a click of a button. They can do that already. So it drastically reduces the amount of time they need to enter new markets and onboarding to these new regions to grow their business.
Exactly, and trying to make sure that it's as inclusive as possible, both for the bigger players as well as for the smaller businesses.
Yeah.
Zian, from there, I think the interesting point to pick up on is that, of course, we've got to balance regional scale with Malaysia's regulatory landscape. Now, Malaysia, of course, has one of ASEAN's most structured, forward-looking and sophisticated financial systems. We've got great oversight from, of course, Bank Negara, the established digital rails, FPX, Do It Now. Now, how is Xendit then growing your regional scale while also being cognizant of the fact that this is not necessarily the shared landscape in each ASEAN partner country?
I think what's interesting is while Malaysia is one of ASEAN's most structured markets, we treat that as a standard rather than a barrier.
Right, okay.
And what we learn from working with the local regulations and compliance also informs us of our decision-making process in our other countries. Vice versa, whatever we learn from other markets that we find applicable to Malaysia as well, we can bring what we learn from other markets to Malaysia as well.
Yeah, so that's, I think, some interesting lessons, because rather than try and maybe remove the type of parameters that you have for the Malaysian market to match perhaps one of the other ASEAN countries with lesser, let's say, digitalization and connectivity, you try and apply the reverse. So that's really interesting. I would also like to pick up on asking about the immediate gains that Malaysian merchants could be expecting. Jayson, tell us a little bit more about this, particularly from the perspective of the wider lens of PayX, of course, is known for improving both onboarding as well as reconciliation for enterprises. And at the same time, Xendit is going to be bringing some regional reach. Some perspectives around this.
Definitely. I think the PayX Xendit system is now fully integrated, and really the merchant wouldn't feel anything out of from the merger. And we design it to be such a way so that they don't feel any pains of having to change from a PayX system.
No migration time or adjustment window.
No downtime. Everything just works perfectly like it used to be. So I think we designed the change process around those scope. And obviously, with Xendit now, like I just mentioned, because of the infrastructure and the regional reach we have, previously the SME can only tap onto the Malaysian payment method that PayX offer. But right now, they can quickly expand into Singapore or Indonesia the next day if they want to. So really greatly supercharge their expansion regionally within ASEAN.
Exactly. So I'm actually hearing that there's a couple of different types of improvements. Perhaps we can dig deeper into looking at faster approvals and smoother settlements, and how these two factors in particular actually help the SMEs along their journey.
Yeah, sure. So all this is done within this one unified single dashboard. like I mentioned earlier, I think in Malaysia alone, most of the SME today have to deal with multiple providers, let alone going regionally. So I think right now, all nicely put together in a single dashboard. Reconciliation is automated. There's no need of manual work. Save time, save energy for the businesses, and yeah, give them all the time and energy for them to focus on things that matter to them more.
Exactly. So it does sound like rather than having to develop a specific technical knowledge skill set, merchants can then just focus on actually starting it for their back-end systems and then going ahead with other parts of the business. So let's say, for example, for someone out there who might be hesitant for their micro enterprise to come on board such payment processing channels, what would you say will be the first day one improvement that a micro merchant would be able to notice?
Yeah, I think to build on the point I mentioned earlier, I think they now immediately have access to previously tens of payment channels, but now hundreds of payment channels. Instantly they can activate, just to inform us. I think they also can enjoy some of the newer feature that Xendit dashboard provides. Previously, PayX was heavily focused on payment acceptance. Xendit can now does payout for the merchant. So it's like a full stack payment journey for the merchants within Xendit dashboard. But of course, for some of the more sophisticated merchant who operates multiple branches, multiple companies, subsidiaries, they're looking to have more detailed or sub-accounts kind of ledger. Xendit can fully support it. And this is the features enhancement that previously PayX doesn't quite have, but Xendit now have a full range of it.
So a full stack indeed. Zian, perhaps let's now draw out and have an even bigger picture as we move to closing out our conversation. Now, Malaysia also matters a lot when it comes to Xendit's next phase with our digital economy growing really steadily. So why is Malaysia a priority market for Xendit's next phase? Tell us a little more.
I think there's mainly three key pillars. That is why Malaysia is such a priority for Xendit. One is the large digital consumer base that Malaysia has, a large SME and base across Malaysia, and lastly, a very supportive national agenda to growing our digital infrastructure. Because of all these three things, we are very eager to work with Malaysia businesses to develop new technologies, innovative solutions such as doing now auto debit and working with Malaysia for Tourism Malaysia 2026. So all these digital agendas that we're very interested to work with Malaysia.
Absolutely. So there's a lot that's going to be happening, especially in the next calendar year. Tourism Malaysia year 2026 is, of course, one of the key highlights. What would you say also with a slightly wider lens, Zian, would be some of the other interesting tangible outcomes that Xendit is looking forward to over the next 2 years, slightly longer term than just the next year of 2026?
Yeah, I think driving innovation, I think a lot of local businesses typically are very familiar with the local landscape.
Sure.
But we want to help businesses expand across the horizon to see how they can target ASEAN as a market rather than just Malaysia as a market, to help them easily sell across to Indonesia, to Thailand, and make it very easy for them to do so, so that they don't have to think about the FX, they don't have to think about the different payment methods. So by broadening the market size, from a 30 million population market, they can immediately have access to a 600 million size market.
Exactly. Now that's definitely something to focus on, because even though we have, as you mentioned, we've got fantastic digital penetration, but of course our cross-border transaction volume still remains rather modest. So there's plenty more opportunity. Perhaps very quickly, some parting thoughts from Jayson about helping Malaysian SMEs to sell across Southeast Asia, bridging from the fact that, of course, the returns are still a bit modest. So how do we encourage that ecosystem?
I feel like the time is now. If you were to grow beyond Malaysia, I think Malaysia, we just finished the ASEAN chairmanship.
That's right.
I think what we heard across the business industry is this growing sense of growing call for the businesses to grow beyond just Malaysia. And then Malaysia has a lot to offer. And I think Xendit now give these businesses the tool and the capacity to quickly grow as compared to last time, where they had to do this manually. So ride on us, tap onto us, grow beyond Malaysia and make Malaysia proud again.
There you go. So the opportunity clearly lies there. Thank you very much, Zian, as well as Jayson, for your insights today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, closing out, ASEAN's digital trade potential is clear, but the region will only move also as fast as its payment infrastructure. For Malaysia, the better connectivity, stronger reliability, and also smoother settlement flows aren't any longer optional. They determine whether our businesses can compete across borders. The path forward is clearly about reducing friction and building those systems that help every Malaysian firm scale confidently into the region. And a great example of that, of course, is Xendit itself. That's all we have time for today. I'm Tamina Kausji, signing off for now. We'll see you again next round.